So you've tackled about your mother's death and how you dealt with it, and also your dad's diagnosis of cancer, and your journey with your dad when he was sick, and the tussle over the burial. You know, Luos, when you're married here and another man marries you, there's a lot of problems there.
Yeah. So as I've said, when our mother disappeared, when I was probably around, I was in Form 4, I remember. I had a suspension from school, and I was supposed to go to Nairobi, but the moment I reached the stage, something just told me go to Homa Bay. I had heard she was working at Homa Bay, so I decided to take a bus and went to Homa Bay. So it was my first time to see her in a long time, and I think the moment I saw her, I understood why. She had caught the virus, of course, and oh my God, it was the HIV of the 90s, that one that, you know, those diagrams that used to be drawn.
Yes.
You know, she was there. She was right in there. She was extremely, extremely sick. You know, she was really extremely sick. And she didn't stay much longer. Yeah, she died, which was really painful because I think when I went to see her, I was in a conciliatory mood.
Yeah.
I had now grown up a little bit, and I wanted to understand why she did what she did. Why are we here? You know, and we could not really explore all that because of how sick she was. And you know, before my mother dies, in this book turns just before she dies. There's a revelation she makes to me that is very, very, it's very, very important in this book, because in every piece of literature you have that point where somebody puts the book down.
The turning point.
Yeah, the turning point. There's something she tells me about myself, you know, and it's the turning point of this book. Everybody usually reaches that place and says, oh my God, you know, and then she dies having told me something. Well, I finish high school, I go to university, and because we are really struggling, while I'm in college, I really do a lot of hustling. I am in the theater, you know, I'm acting, I'm selling beer at rugby sevens, I am doing promotions in supermarkets, I'm doing everything basically to be able to survive, you know. And eventually I get a good job. You know, I get my first job at Wells Fargo in the legal department because of my legal studies, And now...
You studied law,
yeah. So things now are getting better, life is good, Dad is doing tenders, Dad got a good job with a great law firm in Nairobi, and so things are looking good. You know, we are getting things back on track, people are going to school, we can afford meals and all that. So, when everything is now looking good, Dad starts getting sick. He's always sickly. His tummy has a problem. You know, we take him for so many tests, and they're always saying he's got, what is it called? He's got ulcers. So we start treating ulcers. We treat ulcers for almost a year, and he's just going down, he's going down, he's going down, until we realize, no, let's just do a comprehensive check. That's when he's diagnosed with stage 4 cancer.
That was a thunderbolt.
Yeah. Oh my God. It was crazy. It was crazy because we are like, what? From 0 to stage 4, how? You know, so all this time we had been treating ulcers. We should have probably started on cancer. So we all go hard as kids. We are about 11 children from his marriage before my mother, then myself, and then 3 other wives after my mother. So we are 11 kids. So we come together, we start fundraising. I want to say my social media page, they're the ones who bought this book so much. They were there when it happened, and they really did fundraising for me, a lot of it. And so we decided to take Dad to India. I have really spoken about medical tourism in this book, because our health standards in this country, somehow we always have to end up in India if you have some little money, and if you don't, you just have to deal with it. I have a sister who I have dedicated also this book to, called Lillian, who died of blood cancer. And Lillian went through the Kenyan system of treating cancer. And so when and she died eventually. So when Dad was diagnosed, we knew we are not going through the Kenyan system. So we had to take him to India to just give him a chance. And so I've talked about India here. I've spoken about medical tourism, what it means to travel with a patient in India. And for me, it was so special because anytime you look at medical tourism, for men, it's always their wives taking them or their sons. On this, it was me and him. You know, it was a daughter and a father. You know, and it comes all the way from when I was a child, you know, and he was taking care of me as a single dad, to me now growing up and taking care of him. So we went to India. He did his chemos. We lived together. We ran short of money. We moved from a posh area now to the, you know, to not really a slum, but a lower middle class area in India. And basically all that until we finished his chemos. While I was in India, I met the ambassador for Kenya there. I met Janet Kanini, who also was actually she was in India at the same time. She had lung cancer, if I remember. Yeah, so I've really spoken about India. Anyone who's interested in going to India, or anyone who has gone to India because of a sick person, will really relate to this book. The challenges, you know, all that. I've spoken about it. Anyway, eventually we finished chemo. He was declared cancer-free, just as Janet Kanini, and we came back home. So when he came back home, he contracted an infection, a chest infection, which became so difficult to deal with, and eventually he passed on. Yeah, after all that. Yeah, so that is where the book ends, where now he dies, and then I speak on 2 funerals in this book: the funeral of my mother and the funeral of my dad. In very gory details about our culture as Luos with funerals, where we have commercialized funerals to the point when you're sick, very few people are going to come to your aid with money, but the moment you die,
everyone comes.
Millions. People are going because guys want to eat, guys want to dance and all that. I've spoken about Luo funerals in this book and what it means. Yeah.
So if you look at this book and what all the topics you've covered, why did you decide on Rough Silk as a title?
Oh, okay. So Rough Silk. Everybody asks that question. First of all, this book is black. This book is black because I feel there's a lot of growth in darkness. You know, there's a lot of growth in darkness. People think that there's a lot of growth in light, but the truth of the matter is, when going through your darkest moments, your blackest moments, that is when you grow. That is when you get to that is when you're alone, actually.
That's when you reflect.
That is when you reflect. That's why this book, everybody, why is this book black? You know, why is this? It's black because the most growth for any human being will come from darkness. That's number 1. So number 2, rough silk. Silk as a fabric is very soft. And it is very valuable, you know? So what somebody would expect is as soft as silk. But here we have rough silk. Why do we have rough silk? Is because anybody's life, their highs and their lows, their smooth spaces and their rough spaces. Rough silk just describes what a life is. Rough silk talks just about what a life is. You're going to laugh and you're going to cry. There's a lot of laughing in this book. There's a lot of crying in this book. A lot of, you know, winning moments. Like now when I'm called to national schools, and that's a win. And there are moments that are really, really sad, like the death of my mother, eventually the death of my dad, and all that. So rough silk is an antithesis of itself. You know, it's an oxymoron. Yeah, so you have silk, but it's rough. So you're getting both sides of it. Yeah.
So the launch, you did it at Pan-Africa. Many people came. How many copies did you sell?
At Pan-Africa, I sold 1,000 copies. It's so funny, actually. We changed venues thrice because I actually thought the people who would attend my launch would be 50 people, and that is what I had budgeted for. And I had just chosen a very small space. And when I announced that I've written a book and I'm launching it, I think within the first 30 minutes, about 200 tickets were gone.
How much was a ticket?
A ticket was 1,800. It was just the book.
Okay.
Yeah. It was just you buy the book, and that was it. So about 100 books already gone, and then we realized, oh my God, we have a problem. So we had to change the venue from 50 to
100.
a second venue. We looked at 200 possibly, and by probably in 2 or 3 or 4 hours, 200 whatever copies already gone, and now we had to now change to Pan-Africa, which. It's a very special place. They're able to open different halls so that you have a hall. It's not just one space. They're able to open. So, and they told us also, oh my God, we cannot go anything above 350, you know. And so we had to say, the moment we reached 350, we had to tell people, it's sold out, it's sold out. You know, it's sold out, but you can still get a book. And so outside those 350 people, now people continued buying until, we reached.
Why do you think it was books Kenyans don't read? Why do you think there's a lot of interest in the book?
I think that would be nice to ask the people who bought the book. But
because Kenyans, I know, the only place in 1982, which was not raided, was the bookshop.
No.
Yes, it's true.
Are you kidding me?
In 1982, the only place there's no Kenyan who looted is the bookshop.
Oh my God. You know what? I have talked about the culture of reading in this book for Kenyans. And I have said that I never once saw my dad read a book, you know?
Kenyans don't read.
Yeah, I never once saw my dad read a book. And so we are the generation that is changing all that. Not only are we reading books, we are writing books, you know? And I attributed part of why Kenyans don't read books is that there are no, the books that were out here before didn't have anything to do with us. You see, like, every literary space in Kenya had to come from school. And you see, our dads did Romeo and Juliet. They did, is it A Tale of Two Cities? You know, stories that they can't relate to, you know, until recently now we brought in now the African writers, and literature started becoming interesting. Now when we have Margaret Ogola, we have Things Fall Apart, you know, literature started becoming interesting. You know, whenever we write our own stories, people become interested in books. I think one of the reasons why this book has really sold, it's a Kenyan story, number one. Number two, it's the story of an ordinary guy.
Kenyan.
It could be you or me. You know, just the way I started by saying that all biographies out here are about presidents, politicians, the gold medalists. There is no if they're very few, about normal people going through normal Kenyan challenges, trying and failing, trying and trying, failing and failing. So I think one of the reasons people bought this book, it's a Kenyan story. The second reason is it's an ordinary Kenyan's story. And then I think I've also built a niche on social media as a storyteller. I do take my time to write stories about people, about ordinary people. And so the first buyers of this book actually came from my social media space. And I think from now, everybody else gaining an interest, they're like, wow, okay, this is a good writer. Let's see what she has to say. Yeah.
Okay. So John C.B. Okumu, the legendary thespian.
Oh, he's a star.
The legendary newsreader.
Amazing. Yes.
TV host.
Yes.
And a teacher.
Yes, Mwalimu, yes.
How did you get him to be the MC of this function?
Actually, he was not an MC. He interviewed me. We wanted to
On the set.
we wanted to change things a little bit. So most launches in Kenya are all about, okay, so I have written this book that I'm launching. Then you have people coming up with speeches. Yes, I know Charles because we went to school together, and I think this is going to be a good story. I know Charles because You know, it's always somebody coming up with a speech about you. We wanted to change it a little bit. We wanted it to be an interview, him asking me questions, because he's the first person. He was the first person to actually read this book. John C.B. had never heard about me, you know.
Yes.
And when we told him about this book, he was like, "Okay, so who's Deborah?" And then I told him, "Read the book, read the book, and tell me if you do not want to be a part of this." You know, he's a great guy. He's a reader. Thankfully, he took the book. Yeah, he is a reader. He's also an author. You know.
Yeah, he's a Nairobi guy.
Yeah, so he took the book and he read it. When he read it, he said yes. Yes. What he said was, and it has stayed with me, is that this is a new genre of autobiography. In my career, I have never read a memoir like this. The sheer truth and rawness and, you know, just being real about this book is what made him accept to come and interview me. Yeah. But it was really, really an honor to have him there.
So do we look forward for many other books in future? What is your plan from here? Will you go back to law school, finish your law school? Are you just back now in Wells Fargo as a...
Wow. So that's the thing. You see, this book, it's about my dad. It's mostly about my dad. But there's a whole story about me that has not yet come out. So when you look at this book, how it ends... It ends by. Do you have enough time for me to read a sentence?
Yes, read a sentence.
Okay. So, if you look at page 275, 275, I've written Grief, the sequel. So this is how it goes. I woke up from the adjusted seat of my car where I had retreated and momentarily had no idea why I was waking up from a car seat. I peered outside my car window curiously. I saw that I was in the village in our compound. No sign of anybody. Only empty bottles of Jack Daniels, cans of beer and paper plates. Water and soda bottles were on the ground. And it started to come to me. Sleeping dogs lay exhausted from the previous day's feast and night mayhem. This is after burying my dad, yeah? Adjacent to me was Sibor, Dad's car, where I could see Philip's legs on the windscreen from the inside, where he also probably retired to. I turned my head slowly to the right, and my eyes caught it. Behind Mikai's house, the oval mound of fresh soil rising up cruelly from the ground, and my mouth was suddenly dry with fear. I rested my head back to the car seat and closed my eyes. Tears ran from my eyes into my ears. There was salt in my gums and acid in my stomach. My whole body was swollen in a sob. I was witnessing my own death. Grief stood up from the chair in which it had been sitting silently, observing proceedings for the last 2 weeks, and ushered me across the fence where I followed dutifully. This is me waking up after burying my dad.
Yes.
And the book ends there. So a book can come out to do with grief, because everybody asks, so after your dad, how did you deal, for these 6 years before you wrote this book, how have you dealt with this grief? It could be about grief, it could be about me, yeah.
And you've conquered the grief.
Yeah.
Finally in this book.
Oh my God, if I can sit with you for 40 minutes and discuss my dad. Of course, I've struggled a bit. There was a point where I was almost...
Yes, I could see.
Yeah, I've really had to compose myself not to cry. But if I can do a whole 40 minutes without crying, I think I'm in a good trajectory.
In a good space.
Yes, I'm in a good space.
I think you've done a good job.
Thank you.
Writing is top notch.
Thank you.
And the storytelling is there.
Thank you.
I think you're doing a wonderful job. Keep doing it.
Thank you.
And I think you've written so many things about, I can see the Macbeth inside there.
Oh yeah, there's Macbeth. I'm a Shakespearean. I love Shakespeare.
Yeah, I can see.
And you learn why I love Shakespeare. There was a time, do you know, in the 80s and in the 90s, we had the Kenya National Library Service that would bring a van to the estates and would give children books for free. Do you know that I was a beneficiary of that?
No.
So that is when I interacted with Shakespeare, and that is when I started loving books. When you come from a poor background, you don't have TV, you don't have radio, it's books.
There's a quote from that Macbeth. It says that it says you never find the art, you don't find the art, the mind construction of the face. I've forgotten it. It's a very nice one in Macbeth. And then I've seen you talked of Meja Mwangi. I love Meja Mwangi.
Yeah, he was
Meja
amazing.
Mwangi is I call him, Ngugi wa Thiong'o is a rural writer.
Yeah.
Meja Mwangi is a town writer.
He's an amazing guy.
He's amazing.
Yeah, amazing guy.
The
Amazing
setup
guy.
for his books are crazy.
Amazing.
Going down River Road.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing, yeah.
So thank you, Deborah. I think you've done a good job. We end it there, but to everyone who wants to catch, how much is this book?
So as you see, this is a hardcover. I went all the way.
Yes.
It is very rare to find hardcover books from a first-time author. This means I put in a lot of money. We put in a lot of money in the book.
Yeah.
So we have hardcover going for 2,350, and then we have the paperback going for 1,800. So all of them can be found on Nuria and Cheche. Those are bookstores in Nairobi. Yeah.
Thank you, Deborah.
I have a last message for Kenyans.
Yes.
Read Kenyan authors. Please, please, please give us a chance. It's not always West Africa. You know, it's West Africa. It's foreigners. Read Kenyan authors. Read Kenyan books. Books that have stories that look like us. That's very important. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And you've heard it from Deborah Tendo, the author of Rough Silk. And she's taken us through the journey of writing, the journey of her personal struggles, personal triumphs, personal successes, and failures in between, death, sorrow, and happiness. Keep watching. This is the History Makers.